Hello, welcome. I want to thank you all for trudging through the rain and braving the wetness and being here. But the draw is very, very big. We've got our Anteater superstars who have received prestigious scholarships through our office. So I am Rose Jones. I'm director of the Scholarship Opportunities Program. We're up here on the 5th floor of the Science Library in the Student Excellence Center. I want to introduce you to some key individuals. SOP staff, we have Dr. David Skelton, who is one of our professional advisors. Nazreen Ahmad, who is also one of our professional advisors. We have an administrative coordinator and tech guru, Yusuf Al-Shalah. And then we have 3 student advisors. One is with us and she's checking a student in, Jessica Walters. We have one who is joining us via Zoom, Caleb Yang. And then we have a 3rd student advisor who is unable to join, but she is in our office throughout the week, and her name is April. Yeah, do you want to just say hi? Oh, yeah. This is our student advisor, Jessica, lead student advisor, Jessica Walter. Thank you. Okay, and I will introduce our panelists a little later on, Joya and Grant, and then Serena, who's online. But what we want to do today is introduce you to our office a little bit, some of the services that we provide, and then let you hear directly from SOP alumni, fellow Anteaters who went through our office in applying for these prestigious awards, and let them explain to you what their scholarship journey was like. So let me go ahead and turn it over to Dr. David Skelton.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what SOP is, like where we're located at. We're on the 5th floor of the Science Library, which is all part of the Student Excellence Center. So we got the honors over, and your office is right next door to us. But if you take the elevator, 5th floor, and then kind of take a right, we're right there. And then, you can look also on our website to browse a lot of opportunities, a lot of great updating that has been done recently by Yusuf and his team. And also, we're online, so please, please, please check out our Instagram and subscribe. It really helps our algorithm and things like that. And then we get to reach more students, which is always important, and our website as well. Okay. So what is the difference between, like, what we call the Scholarship Opportunities Program, but what types of scholarships do we do? How are we different from financial aid? The way that I think of it is, okay, everybody who wants scholarships are kind of looking for money, right, for education. But where does the money come from? And in terms of like Scholarship Central, a lot of those money is coming from departments or donors or something like that. And the purpose of that money is to fund your undergraduate education, and it's like coming from UCI itself. For a lot of the scholarships that we work for, that we help you apply for, they all come from external funding agencies. Some of these are government agencies, like the cultural department and things of that nature. Some of them are like private organizations, like the Paul and Daisy Soros is run by that family. Same thing with like Gates Cambridge, is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation run that. And some of them are foundations, like the Goldwater is a foundation named after Barry Goldwater. Same thing with the Truman, it's named after President Truman. But it's a separate foundation. So it really just depends. A lot of these are competitive, and so you have to write essays and do all kinds of things, and we help you through that process. But the short is, like, where does the money come from? They come from outside organizations that all have different deadlines and stipulations, and we help you apply for those. Many of those are for undergrad, but a lot of them are also for postgraduate opportunities as well. So since I just mentioned that there's a lot of writing that you have to do for these awards, we help you with that. We are, officially writing specialists who help you with these essays and with these application materials. We also look at past successful applications with you. We have workshops about that, and going over what to look for and how that helps you with your own applications. We also, many of these external funding agencies want an endorsement from the university which often requires a letter of support that we write on your behalf. And then a lot of these also have interviews. Some of them have multiple interviews, but many of them will at least have one interview, and we help you prepare for that. We do mock interviews, sometimes multiple rounds, and then just help you with personal professional development like resumes and CVs of that nature. We also, have recommendations that we can make for you based upon particularly say you look at all the scholarships, you're like, oh, I want to apply for 8 of them. They all look amazing. You realistically probably shouldn't apply for that many. And also you really want to, there's a lot of work and you want to tailor it to your own interests. So we talk you through that process. We also have everything broken down in step-by-steps to help you get through everything. A lot of it now we're using Canvas and we're using UCI Canvas to help you get through that. And then we remind you of deadlines, assignments. We have outreach events like this and a lot of different avenues to answer your questions. Some of it is our own one-on-one meetings. We also have Tea Time Tuesday at 2 and other things where we are available. So why even apply for these scholarships? What is the purpose of them? They're so competitive. What if I don't get one? Why even try, right? Well, some of it is if you try, you can't get anything that you don't try for, right? So go for it. You also will learn a lot about yourself. You'll have a lot of written material to help you out later in the future. And also you get to make connections because the process of applying for scholarships requires you to talk really closely to your faculty, to make relationships there. A lot of the writing materials helps you for graduate school and preparing for those applications. And then receiving these awards, we have someone who is one of the first Churchill recipients at UCI, that really helps boost UCI's prestige and boost your diploma. So I'm now going to turn over to my colleague, Nisreen Abad, to talk to us about the awards that our scholarships office specifically helps you apply to.
I'm reaching out for it. So I'm not going to go too much into details because we want to give our panel more time to answer your questions. But basically, there are many, many, many scholarships out there, but our office focuses on 21 prestigious scholarships. You can scan the QR code that'll take you directly to the names of the scholarships that we help advise for on our website. So some of them are very well known, like the Fulbright, the Goldwater. Some of you have probably heard about those. Knight Hennessy for Stanford. We just had somebody come in from Stanford, Christian Tanja come in from Stanford to talk about that 2 weeks ago in our info session there. And so these are very prestigious, and David said, they come from external funding as well. So the application components are pretty much very similar for most scholarships. Most of them will have a project or study proposal, especially the ones that are research or service scholarships. I would say 100% of them probably have a personal statement in some capacity where you're writing about yourself, and what kind of motivates you. Letters of recommendations from either your professors, people that you have worked with that know you very well. CV or resume, we also take a look at those. So David talked about looking at your drafts. We look at all of these, and even your application forms and your transcripts. So we kind of guide you throughout the whole process. We give you feedback on these writing components. Believe it or not, we also look at your letters of recommendations. So you don't get to see them, but we see them. And if there's something that we feel like that your letter writers can improve upon, like let's say a scholarship is geared more towards leadership, and they haven't really talked a lot about your leadership skills. We tell them, if you can please talk a little bit more about leadership here or something like that. So we kind of work with you to have the strongest application possible for the scholarships. And these are just some of the components of those. So to get started in our advising process, you fill out something called an SO pre-application from SOP. So the SO pre-application is actually not submitted to the scholarship committees, so it's only internal. It's for our use in order to better advise you. So we're going to talk about what that contains, and it's administered through UCI Canvas. So Yusuf just fixed everything up, and now we have it through UCI Canvas. It used to be very long and tedious, and now it's a 1 to 2 hour thing that you can get done within that time frame, and that's how you get started and you become a candidate in our advising cycle. So what does the SO pre-application components have? So you kind of tell us about, you look at the awards, you see what ones you seek to apply to, you research, you provide some research and leadership experience. You tell us if you know any languages other than English, if you have any study abroad experience, future plans, references, and just a brief personal statement. You write a full one for the application. So the idea behind this is just to give us information in order to better advise you and to see what scholarships would work best with you. I believe before this step is when they take the virtual advisor quiz, and they also see our student advisors. And so when you take a virtual advisor quiz and you see the student advisors, they already kind of tell you which scholarships are probably going to work best for you. And then you do this SO pre-application, and then you get to see David and I. You have to go through a lot before you get to us. No,
There's no SOP prep anymore, just letting you choose.
SO pre-application, no more SOP prep. So what can you do even now, even if you're a first year or a second year? You could actually, with the office, obviously, do the virtual advisor quiz that I just talked about. You could do that through our website. You can always revise your answers later. So even if things change, like let's say you fill it out as a freshman, you could always revise answers later. Meet with a student advisor, even if you're not still eligible, like let's say you're a freshman or even a sophomore and you're not eligible for some of the scholarships, still I would suggest that you meet with our student advisors, because there are things that you could be doing now that can help you prepare for your application. Lots of times if we get a senior and they need research experience, let's say for the scholarship that they want, and they don't have it, it's kind of too late at that time, right? But if you're a freshman or a sophomore, you know what you need to do, and you kind of build a plan about, this is what I need to do in order to be competitive for this scholarship. So it's really good to start early. You could also become a student advisor. So Jessica, Caleb, and April will tell you how fun it is to be in our office with us. And you could actually be a student advisor and know a lot about the process, get some work experience, and also apply for scholarships. Jessica also applied for scholarships as well.
People are leaving us.
I said people are leaving us, so we need more. On your own, what we recommend is that you form relationships with your professors, with people around campus, because you're going to need those letters of recommendations. Get involved in organizations and clubs and activities. I think the panelists will probably talk a lot more about that. And if you are interested in going for the research scholarships, get some research experience with Europe or other UC labs. Definitely, you should be constructing a resume, because you're going to have to do that. And also apply for honors programs. We have one in our office, Phi Beta Kappa, but that's by invitation only. But that looks also really good on your application. So just a run through before we get to the panelists. This is how you can contact us, email us, visit our website. Take the virtual advisor quiz to get started. There are some pre-application deadlines that you should be aware of. And tea time Tuesdays at 2 is when you can drop by at the office. So that's tea time Tuesday at 2. And you can stop by anytime to talk to David or I or the students without any appointment. So you can scan the QR code. That'll take you to all those links. And without further ado, Rose will introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much. So one thing that I want to build upon in terms of what David had said and Nazreen had said about these awards, externally funded, that means that this is a nationwide, so to speak, competition. So while some of the department scholarships and the donor funded scholarships, you're competing with fellow anteaters, these awards, you're competing with not only your fellow anteaters, but also your peers at all universities across the US, and some of them globally, right? So the fact, for instance, that Grant Lai, who is a graduating senior in chemistry and biological sciences, is our first Churchill Scholar, UCI's first Churchill Scholar. There are only 16 Churchill Scholars named from across the 50 states in the nation, right? So He has elevated UCI. We are on the map, and not just elevated himself, but the kind of work and the caliber of scholar that comes out of UCI. This is your fellow anteater. He's also a Goldwater scholar. Goldwater is the premier STEM scholarship in the country. Universities are only able to nominate 4 juniors, 1 transfer student, and 1 student with a veteran status. Oh, sophomores, yes. And the fact that Grant is also one of those few, as well as Joya, who is a graduating senior in neurobiology. She is a Goldwater scholar as well, and she has gotten very involved with the Goldwater scholar community. So when you're talking about that networking, she is plugged in, as is Grant, and she was instrumental in starting a connection with this very prestigious, very well-known undergraduate research symposium conference at Rice University. And that was the first conference where about 100 Goldwater scholars also convened, and there were 400 student presenters there. That is an ongoing thing that she has initiated. And then joining us virtually is a recent grad. Serena Wu was our first NIH, National Institutes of Health scholarship recipient in 20 years. She graduated last spring, and that was in pharmaceutical sciences, and she's zooming in from Washington, D.C. So they are the big draw. I know you're waiting to hear from them. So,
She's in Maryland.
oh, Maryland. Yeah. Okay. It's close to D.C., but not the same. Okay. That's right. Oh, that's what that stands for. Okay. So let me go ahead and pose the question to all of you. When did you first hear about these awards, and what encouraged you to apply? Yeah, Serena, do you want to go ahead and start?
I first heard about SOP was through a very small setting. I don't remember, was it from a club or a class presentation? And then afterward, I visited the website and then to look at different scholarships. And I was overwhelmed by the amount of scholarships available for students to apply. But what really encouraged me was like definitely the scholarship part, but also it's the talk from the presentation that really helped me, that I really wanted to challenge myself to get started with this.
Grant?
Could you state the question again?
Yes. So when did you first hear about these awards, and what encouraged you to apply?
I think I first heard about these awards when I got the email from SOP. I think every quarter they send it out to people, like I think almost everyone who has above a certain sort of like academic threshold. And I threw it in the recycle bin the first time. And then the second time I decided to look at it because I realized that I wanted to sort of fund my, tuition at UCI. And so I took a look at them, and then that made me think, hey, maybe it's worth trying, because although I didn't think I qualified for any of them, it's just better to write it now. And then maybe if I don't make it, in my sophomore year, I'll try again in my junior year. And that was sort of my thought process. I didn't go in with very high expectations.
I had a very similar experience as Grant. I got an email and thought, I probably wouldn't qualify for this. This is completely foreign to me. I have no idea how to do any of this stuff. And there is a lot of information if you look at the website. And for someone like me, I was very overwhelmed. So I just saw in the email that you could schedule a little appointment with an advisor. And I was very happy I got to meet with Jessica. So I went in completely blind. I actually didn't look at any of the scholarships. I didn't do my homework. I didn't do my research. And but Jessica was so helpful. She really sat down with me and said, like, okay, well, what are you interested in? And we sort of talked through each scholarship and saw what would be a good match for me.
And this portion of the presentation is called True Confessions. Okay, so could you describe how confident you were at the beginning of the SOP application process, and then describe how you transformed by the end? Serena?
Yes. Believe it or not, I wasn't confident at all in the beginning of the process. I wasn't sure if I had the experiences or accomplishments to be selected, or if my story would be interesting. But however, through the process of writing short responses from Canvas or working on multiple draft of the essays, I began to realize that I did have a story worth sharing, and I gained more confident through this process that I believe everyone has a unique path to lead them to where they are today. And the SOP application process really help you to reflect on those experiences and understand how they shape your values.
I would probably agree with Serena. I was gonna say that I feel like I actually felt both confident and unconfident. And I say that sort of like because you go in halfway and you're thinking like, oh, okay, it's easy to fill out, or I should say easy to not take seriously. So like I could easily just, write up some random stuff and then say, okay, that's it, right? And so in that part, I didn't really think too hard about it. And then the other part of me would be, very unconfident. I would just say, that's probably unrealistic. But I feel like, even after I did, I think it was my first scholarship that I had received. After that, I don't think I was even extremely confident because I was like, okay, maybe that was a fluke. But again, I don't take some of my thoughts too seriously. And I think that's just kind of how I feel even now. I don't take, applying to this extremely seriously, even though the outcomes are, by no means, unserious. But I think I feel a little bit of both whenever I do this.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's a balance between confidence, but confidence and not being confident, in that you have to realize that going into these things and just writing and not being afraid of like writing the perfect story the first time, that's how you do it. You kind of just sit down and write nonsense. And my advisor, David, was really helpful in saying like, you should just write, and then we'll over many iterations kind of polish it and see what you're actually trying to say. And it is exactly that thing where you're not trying to say like, oh, I'm so amazing that I can just write whatever. It's more like that is how that process works. So don't be afraid to just work on it over and over again. But that wasn't exactly the question. The question was, did I start out not very confident? I started out completely not confident whatsoever. I had never applied to a scholarship. I had no idea what it entailed. I didn't think I was competitive. And then throughout the process, the more that I learned about it and the more support and encouragement I got and the more I worked on my application, I, at the very end, was pretty confident. I thought that basically because David was just like, no, don't worry, you're a very competitive applicant for this. And I think coming out on the other end, getting the award, it almost like bit me in the butt in that as I went into the fellowship cycle. So after I got the scholarship, I also thought about applying to fellowships. Now I was in a position where I was like, okay, well, David thinks so highly of me. And if I don't get a fellowship, he's going to be disappointed in me. But I think that if you're going into the process thinking, oh, I can't compete with this, like, look at these amazing people that I'm reading their bios, that is how everyone feels going into it. So don't be discouraged.
So can you talk about some of the skills that you gained, which have contributed to, so to speak, your elevated confidence levels that you didn't have at the beginning, but which you do now have at the other end of the process? Serena?
Definitely writing. It was a lot of writing, and this really helped to select the best story or examples to show what makes you stand out. And I like the meeting to receive feedback on the draft and what makes a strong statement or how I can improve. The writing and the time management skills, they will be very helpful for graduate program applications.
Okay. Grant? Yeah, so can you talk about some of the skills that you felt like you gained by having gone through the SOP process?
I think it's definitely structure. Okay. So, whenever, just like what Joya was saying about like looking at people's profiles and then being like, there's no way I could ever compare to this. Completely reasonable response. But then the next thing that follows is, how do I even, like, let's say I could, how could I ever, match or even reach whatever target I'm trying to set? And I think SOP is sort of like helping you organize and sort of like, discard certain, like, I would say, like, distractions in your process. It's like, okay, just write a draft now. Okay, just submit it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Right. That sort of like writing process is something that I, really cherished coming out of these applications. And I pretty much use the same process to apply to pretty much anything. If it's not scholarships, it could be, schools, it could be jobs, that sort of things.
Yeah, building off of both what Serena and Grant are saying, it's all about the most amazing thing that I've learned through this process is how you take everything about yourself, which is so disparate and crazy, and consolidate it into a cohesive story that retains its personality while also meeting the prompt of whatever it is you're applying to. And I didn't have any concept of how you put together that package really about yourself before. But yes, you learn writing and you also learn how to meet not how to twist yourself into being whatever it is they want, but to really understand what people are asking for and find how your story fits into that prompt.
Excellent, thank you. So if you look back and you think about everything that you did, is there anything that you would have done differently that would have better prepared you for your journey? Serena?
If I could go back, I would have probably start looking into the scholarship, the details earlier to understand what they're looking for and to find or start thinking about what stories or example I could use. Because drafting a strong essay takes time and starting earlier would have made the process less stressful.
I'm not sure if I would change anything because I think it would be really ungrateful of me to say if I would change anything given how successful I have been so far. So maybe I should say that, if I didn't look at this early, like if I had recycled the email many more times that SOP had sent, I would say, consider reading it. Just like keep an open mind about these things. When I applied to the Goldwater Scholarship, I had like zero expectations of ever getting. I remember telling my letter writer, I said, I want to be real honest with you. I'm just doing this just to see how much I can get away with. And he was like, that's perfectly fine. Let's just write up something and then, submit it. And I was like, okay, cool. And then obviously that didn't turn out. That wasn't how things turned out. But I feel like keeping that open mind was what, really made things, work for me.
I think one thing that I would have done differently is I would have applied to more scholarships and to more fellowships because you although another thing I would have done differently was try to make more time for the entire process because as Serena was saying, you have to get to things early and really understand what it is you're applying to if you want to spend that time being more deliberate and making better progress. I had very, very little free time. And David was really flexible with me, which is really fantastic. But I think that if I had started early and really looked at all of the various scholarships and told myself, well, how can I be strategic with the possibility of applying to more than one and making the most of the materials I'm putting together in a way that they can go to more than one thing. Because if you think that you can't get a scholarship, you're probably wrong. I had a great experience recently when I was interviewing for grad school. I went out for an interview and I met at like a top university and I met all these really incredible students and I was talking to all my fellow interviewees and these are the top of the top, like these people that put me to shame. They're really amazing to talk to. And I met this girl and she said, oh, I didn't apply to the Knight Hennessy because I just thought I wouldn't get it. It's like, okay, well, if that person thinks that they're not going to get it, everyone's wrong. So you should just apply and make the most of your time.
Yeah. And just speaking from experience, where we've had past panels in previous years, every single anteater who has been a successful scholarship recipient and prestigious scholarship recipient, every single one of them did not believe that they were going to get it. And I think that speaks to anteater values in the sense of, humility, but I also think it speaks to anteater values in terms of courage. You still, even if you don't believe you're going to get it, you still put your name in the hat. You still go through the grueling process, and it is grueling. But so that's part of our office. One of our office's roles is to encourage. So really build upon that courage and show you and provide that structure to get to that point. And then when you're talking about, oh, I wish I had applied to more, that's absolutely serious in terms of recognizing how much time it takes per scholarship application. So when you start off saying, oh, I want to apply to 8, imagine even just applying to 1 being very much like a 4-unit writing course. So then if you add an additional scholarship application, you're adding not just a kind of an arithmetic in terms of workload, but more a logarithmic or algorithmic, right? So let me go ahead and move to the next question. So we talked about gaining in confidence and experience. How else have you grown from this experience?
I think yes, I have gotten more confident, but it's really funny because so I keep saying this thing about seriousness. Okay, so these scholarships, right? Like they're kind of serious, right? This is real money. This is like a real opportunity. You open up a lot of doors, right? So it's definitely serious, but I feel like each time I do something like this, I progressively take myself less serious, only because you realize that's really funny that you were freaking out before. That's like pretty funny. And I think that's actually a really good thing that I've sort of grown to like into myself, which is just like, hey, everything is just what it is. If I don't get something, that's fine. And if I do get something, that's great. And I think that sort of mindset really hardened as I applied into more and more scholarships.
Yeah, I think that was a really valuable lesson that I learned through the process too. When you have so much fear about this thing that seems so above you, and then when you get the scholarship, you realize that actually, like that's just sort of life. Some people get it, sometimes you don't, and it's fun. And these things are just kind of a silly thing that humans on Earth do, and that everything we do as humans just sort of, not to say arbitrary, that's kind of nihilistic, but just like weird and fun and a strange phenomenon of being a living human being. And I think you start to like see yourself very differently.
Yeah.
You learn a lot of humor about things. And I think another thing that I learned too, that's what we're supposed to be talking about, right? Not getting totally sidetracked. I completely like forget the question too. I think, and I kind of touched on this before about learning how to consolidate everything about yourself and tell a good story, is you're sort of forced to, not forced, but you're encouraged to kind of sit there and think about like, how do I tell the narrative of my experiences? What have been the really interesting little details about my journey through all these different things that I've done, and how have I reflected on those things? And then also, you kind of write this story about another person, and that person happens to be you. But for different scholarships, you might focus on different things. And for me, at least, it really helped in objectively looking and seeing like, oh, I kind of like that version of myself, or I like these things, but I don't like this so much. And for me, it really helped me decide like what I wanted to study in grad school and exactly what I wanted to move forward with, specifically the things that I was kind of on the fence about, if I wanted to go in one direction or another. So it was a very valuable experience.
Awesome. And then Serena, now that we got you on video again, do you want to chime in?
Yes. This experience really taught me resilience, and also the importance of self-reflection, that I like to look back on my past experiences and understanding what I really want to achieve in the future. That was really helpful. And also now, as I near the end of my NIH program, I really appreciate how this funded opportunity allowed me to to select, like the freedom to select any field or any lab that I wanted to join. It could be computational work, it could be, I personally really enjoy working at the bench. While some of my friends, they're doing some clinical work, they like the clinical or patient interactions, that this program has been very incredible, that I feel like I feel like I'm still in college, even though I graduated in June, because this post-bac program allowed me to meet with my career advisor at NIH, or educational advisor, writing advisor, research mentor. So it really helped me to solidify my passion for research and also prepare me for my next step towards my PhD program.
Excellent. So it sounds like you matured from students to scholars, and with that came a lot of not just research and academic maturity, but also a certain level of emotional intelligence maturity, right? So excellent. So last question before we open the floor to questions. What encouragement, words of wisdom, or tip would you like to provide those who are attending today? We have multiple attendees virtual as well. So think about, what would you like to say that would be a kind of piece of advice, piece of encouragement, a tip, words of wisdom. Serena, do you want to go first?
Yes. My biggest advice to, again, I feel like it's helpful to start early and give yourself plenty of time to reflect on your story. Every step that you take, it's progress. So believe in yourself and trust in your ability. And another piece of advice is to have a plan B. That it's important to remember that even with a strong application and many accomplishments, you may not always get what you want. And there's factors beyond our control, especially with like the recent changes in administration, that there's a lot of uncertainty whether the program, like the NIH program, will continue in the same form. So it's always good to have plan B.
Right.
I would also agree with Serena in saying starting early is really, really important. I think I was really lucky to take an email seriously in my end of my freshman year. I don't really know what would happen if I didn't take that seriously. I don't know if I would be in the same place I am today. And then also, I would actually add that your plan B should be your plan A. And this is more like a sort of imagine another character of yourself. I know David and I have talked about this before. You just put on like different hats, right? You just kind of imagine yourself for a couple of days. And on your application, like, hey, maybe I can do these kind of things if it's like something like a scholarship that offers you something. And that, on my earlier point, don't take it too seriously. If you get it, that's great. If you don't, it's probably fine. These things are more of like, I'm going to attempt to translate an idiom, but it's sort of like plating gold on yourself. That's sort of just like an additional thing. You're fine as a person and everything else, but this is sort of just to make things better, right? So I'd say start early. Imagine that things are probably okay if you don't win, and if you do win, that's great.
Yeah, I think a really important thing to point out, and we were talking about, not being afraid to do this and taking advantage of the opportunity, like actually checking that email, is anyone like attending this info session has already self-selected for being one of the more competitive applicants by actually being willing to try to apply to one of these scholarships. Because a lot of people saw the email, thought, I won't get it, or weren't interested, or just kind of moved on. So you've already made it past the first screening stage, and you should feel really vindicated by that. And I think, yes, to just reiterate, starting early, but not necessarily just starting early, but trusting in the SOPs process, because they've really broken it down so amazingly. The team that they have here are so helpful. And in the infrastructure that they have on Canvas, they have every step, every deadline spelled out for you. You can really just like trust in your advisor and trust that process. And I want to point out, from someone who's now interacted with a lot of Goldwater scholars, Most institutions that are Goldwater institutions don't have that. They have some person who is the person in charge of endorsing people and like no real support. So you are also at a huge advantage at being at UCI going through that process, not just for the Goldwater, but for others too. And I had another point, but I don't really remember what it was.
We can come back to it. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the floor as well as to our virtual participants. If you have any questions, please just raise your hand. Same with the virtual participants, and we'll go ahead and get those answered, okay? Of the panelists. Yeah.
I think Serena was touching on this before, but you have to do a lot of self-reflection for this, and something's come up about ways you might want to improve as a scholar. Have you guys had any of those experiences about things that the ways that you feel you've improved after going through this process?
So the question was about how the panelists felt that they have improved going through the process, after going through the process. Going through the self-reflection process as a scholar.
Oh, I can say this. It's like most of the time most of the time you go through life, you never think about, like, you don't do meta reflection, which is like you don't view yourself from third person, or you try to do so you do third person analysis to your friends, to your parents, to your teachers, to everyone else, but you don't do that often to yourself. And when you do, it tends to be very polar. And this process teaches you to sort of not treat it as something like, oh, am I good or bad? And more of a, what are some collection of traits that I have? And then what kind of story does this actually, entail? And, most stories about, there are a lot of stories out there about different people and, different scholars, different historical figures. And your story is probably a mixed mash of, a couple of them, right? And so this process also allows you to sort of like take what you learn about others and say, hey, maybe I have some of those traits, and not so much of a, am I good or am I bad? It's more of a, who am I? That sort of thing. And that is like really, really instrumental, because if you're not applying for this, you will do this when you apply to like other schools. You will do this if you apply to a job. If somebody asks you to write a cover letter, you do an interview, they almost invariably ask you like, what's your weakest trait, or like, what's your strongest point, right? And it's like, you can't do that if you don't know who you are, right? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I remember sort of going into the process and looking at like my CV and my publications and like poster presentations and blah, blah, blah. And thinking like, how is it that I've done so much, but I can't think of like a funny anecdote or like a real story? Like it was like I went to sleep and just woke up one day and suddenly I've achieved all these things, but it's like I wasn't even there experiencing it. And I kind of freaked out thinking like, do I even have a personality? Because because you're never really prompted to start thinking about those little ways in which you really give credit to yourself by sharing your story in a way that's entertaining for people. And if that's like, I think that's one common thread with a successful application too, is when you apply to something, you're probably, there's lots of people that are eligible because of the things they've achieved, and you're one of them. But the difference ultimately between, in my opinion, like why someone reviewing this application is going to choose you versus someone else is because they weren't bored when they read yours, but they were bored when they read someone else's. So that was really valuable. You just learn, you start like remembering the things that made your journey interesting, and you start also feeling a lot better about what you've been able to achieve because you remember like, oh, no, that was interesting. I remember when I thought of that. I remember when I did this thing. And it's almost like you get to go through this little thought exercise of being proud of yourself. So it was fun.
Serena?
I think they answer your question really well. And I think reading someone else's application can really help the process started too.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent question. Excellent responses. Thank you. Yeah.
I also want to say, they already talked about this, but not taking it personally if you don't get an award too, because another thing that I learned is that so many things go into why you're chosen, and only like a tiny little percent of it is actually how competitive you are against other applicants. There's, especially for fellowships that are based at a specific university or are tied with something else, those schools might also be looking at the specific things you're going to bring to that community at that time with resources that they have. And it's something you should take personally whatsoever. And maybe like we stand up here as like Goldwater scholars and NIH scholars and Churchill scholars, but we also applied to lots of scholarships or fellowships and didn't get them. So I don't know, in the future, maybe you'll be like, this is Joya Kapoki. She's a Goldwater scholar, but she's not a Knight Hennessy scholar, or she's not an NIH scholar. Just keep in mind that the people that you're impressed with who have achieved something also failed and didn't get it their first time around. So.
I was gonna say, on that note, just like Joya, I also am not a Knight Hennessy scholar because we both applied in the same cycle and we both asked, did you get it? And we were like, no. And we're like, okay, whatever, that sort of thing. I also, yeah, that's true. That is true. She interviewed. I did not interview, so there you go. But there's also I think I also applied to the DoD Smart Fellowship. You were semi-finalist. Yeah, and then I don't know, they just never contacted me after that. So, they ghosted me. So, I mean, that's fine too. I mean, I didn't expect too much out of that either. I think I had also started and not completed like at least half a dozen applications just because I thought about it. And then I was like, you know what? Never mind. I don't actually think I fit really well for this one. And I'll just continue with these other two,
Yeah, I did it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Finish your thought, and then we have a question on this.
Sure. Awesome. Also, that's you bring up a really remind me of something that's very important to say. If you're like skimming stuff or you're relying on your advisor to fill in some of the blanks, at the very least, don't be like me. Actually read like the eligibilities really, 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 really clearly. Because I know that for NIH and for the NSFG RFP, both things that I went through with to the end and actually submitted, I got rejected from both of them for like a clerical ineligibility. And so just like keep that in mind. You don't want to do that to yourself. That happened to me.
Question from Zoom.
Yeah.
Says they'd love to hear if the applicants had any heartwarming or funny memories that stuck out during their application process.
Okay. Any funny or heartwarming memories or anecdotes from the application process that you want to share? Remember, this is True Confessions.
I'll share. Maybe I made David a gift. Maybe you want to, yeah.
That's so cool. You can't hear, so you.
Oh, okay. I made, so after I got the Goldwater scholarship, David and I are both big Star Trek fans, and my favorite Star Trek movie is Star Trek IV, A Voyage Home, which is about the team on the Starship Enterprise having to go back in time to rescue whales because only whales can decode this very important message that's been posited in the future. So I took the movie poster and I edited it to have David in the movie poster. And I give it to him as a gift.
Finally, Captain Kirk.
Yes.
That was one of my goals, and when people were like, "What do you want to be growing up?" Like when I was little, like captain of the Enterprise. So you made me the captain of the Enterprise.
I'm so glad that I could do this.
I think I have a funny anecdote, which is on that like same note of like when you're like doubting yourself or whatever, like on like a normal Friday afternoon, and then you see an email by SOP, and then you start to think about it, and then you're like, you know what, maybe I won't even apply to it because somebody else is going to apply to it. Now, okay, so that's a really funny mindset, right? So when I ended up applying for, I think everything I applied for, David wouldn't tell me anything about how many people applied, but then like after I get through like one round or something like that, he'll be like, 5 other people applied, or like you're the only one who applied. And I was like, that's kind of crazy, like, so I mean, like that means that like if I took myself, like if I just did stuff that automatically made me competitive. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense, like I'm pretty sure there are other more qualified people too.
Yeah,
and so that was really funny to me. I think that's utterly hilarious because I don't think I'm like the most qualified candidate in any of these competitions. I by no means don't think I'm bad. I don't think I'm bad. It's just really strange, that there isn't more people who apply.
Yeah, like showing up.
Scholar.
Yeah.
No, but we do have years where people won't apply for something and you're just like, man, we could nominate up to this many people or whatever, and then like, nobody applied that year. Now, we also have years where we have like so many people that apply for things, that's like, oh man, we're gonna have to reject some really good people. So you got lucky.
I guess I'm lucky, yeah, so.
But yeah, just to say, like, showing up really is half the battle. It is funny. Just like being willing to do the thing.
Serena, do you wanna share a funny anecdote? Or heartwarming?
I was trying to think something funny, that I think is when I actually received a scholarship that I think Bros emailed me about it. And I was like, am I in trouble? Like, is it like a mistake? Like, did I not get a scholarship? Like, why did I get an email from Rose? I was like, do you want me to come to the office? Like, is this something's wrong? But actually it was because I was the recipient from 20 years, and I was like, oh, okay, I did receive it. I did receive it. Thank you.
We're sorry, that was an error, you didn't actually receive it.
I have two other funny anecdotes. I just remember. One is when you don't get something, David, or I don't know if it's just David, there are other people who send these emails, right? Like we're sorry, like things didn't work out, but you consider applying. I was like, David, why are you writing in this like built block, like this like block format? It's like, I know who you are behind this thing, you know? And so I sent an email, I was like, that's not, I know who you are, you know? And so I thought that was funny.
I do. Yeah, I've had that same experience. It's when you like work that closely with an advisor, you like they're a human being and you're friends now, but then you do have to send out those emails. It's like the appropriate email. And I thought that was it's fantastic. It's like, David.
Would you like a more personalized?
Yes.
Sorry.
We want bro at the end in the signature.
I mean, it's funny. It's humorous because I mean, then I talked to David just over email. I was just like, hey, you know, how are things? And he's like, that's good. And it's like, dude, we just talked about like everything else. And so I think it's just humanizing in that experience.
So I hope what comes across is that the SOP office is here for you, and you will form really lasting relationships, and the mystery and dauntingness of the entire process will be helped, it will be removed, it will be lessened by working with your professional advisor, by working with the SOP team, with the SOP office, and the resources that we provide. And we help you build those relationships or strengthen those relationships with others on campus, your faculty, other offices. UCI really is a very unique place in terms of the ecosystem of support. And we're a young university, but we have hit the ground running. We are doing well in these national prestigious scholarship competitions. You have your fellow anteaters as your, so to speak, models, right, of what's possible. Okay? And you could be the next one, next panelist, giving similar words, telling different stories, but still getting the same laughs. Okay? But for those who are here, I want to go ahead and invite you to stay a little bit, mingle. And for those online, thank you for attending. And we hope to see you either Tuesdays at 2 during our tea time, or, scan the QR code, quickly take the 2-minute virtual advisor quiz, have out of the 21 awards narrowed down to maybe 5, and then talk with either Jessica, Caleb, or April, and then get access to the pre-application. Just want to put it out there, March 3rd is the next deadline that you should have in mind for the T10 awards. And then April 28th will be the other pre-application for the E11 awards. Okay? And then, of course, don't put the SOP email into the trash. Do take a look and do really think about it for a while. Imagine yourself in this spot. All right? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Serena, Grant, and Joya.